Hi, so for my flipped classroom, the topic that I chose to do was the water cycle, and the targeted grade level was fourth grade. Um, my essential questions were, what are the phases of the water cycle, and what does each phase of the water cycle do? So for my description of my flip video, it was a Go Noodle on the water cycle, and it was basically just a song where they explained the phases of the water cycle and what each water cycle does. So the state standards I used, it says use models to make observations to explain how the systems work. So, for example, the model of the water cycle. Um, so my first activity, it's a DOK1 because it's more of a recall on the what they learned from the video. Um, it's where students must match the different phases of the water cycle with the corresponding pictures and the definitions given to them, and they can also use the water cycle video as guidance. Um, I also, for Bloom's taxonomy, said it was more of a knowledge less remember because they're kind of remembering and recalling the knowledge that they learned from the video. And I said it would be a adoption for Tim's because the teacher is direct students in the procedural use of technology. So for the gains activity, I said it was a DOK2 because they're starting to develop skills and concepts, and they're applying the knowledge that they learned into a diagram. So for the activity, students must fill out the phases of the water cycle and create a diagram using a bunch of art supplies and other resources, and they must draw and label it. And they can also use a water cycle or other resources as well, just because the water cycle didn't really do a good job at visually representing the cycle. So I wanted to give them other resources, and it's a good way for them to be able to look at the water cycle as a whole. So for Bloom's taxonomy, I said I think it would also be a knowledge and remember because they're still trying to recall and remember the knowledge, but they're also being able to use that and create something. And yeah. So for bold, I said it would be a DOK3 because it's starting to become a little more complex, and they're starting to have to explain more about the water cycle and what it does. So for this activity, the students will create a story from the point of view of a raindrop and explain what the raindrop goes through in the water cycle. Um, I would think this would be more of for Bloom's taxonomy, comprehension and understanding, because they're being able to show that they can grasp the meaning of the water cycle and what it does and what a raindrop will go through in the water cycle. And then for the Tims, I would also say that this is adoption because they're kind of being told what to use, what technology to use. Um, and lastly, the cheer activity would be a DOK4, just because it really extends the students' thinking, and um, it's more at a complex level because they have to recreate the whole water cycle. So for the activity, the students must create a 3 to 5 minute video recreating all the steps of the water cycle. The video must have all the phases in order, and it should also include 2 facts about each phase. Um, for Bloom's taxonomy, I think this would be application and apply because they're kind of applying the knowledge they learned in a different and new concrete situations. And for active, I would also say adoption because the teacher's still kind of directing them on what technology to use. So yeah, this was my flipped classroom lesson plan, and yeah.